It's a pleasure for us to welcome you here in Vienna for the European November Conference 2010, Public Space and Challenges of Urban Transformation in Europe, Politics and Culture. Before we come to the opening words of the Dean of the Faculty of Architecture and Planning, Klaus Semsrott, and of Brigitte Jielka, we have some credits to some institutions and people. First of all, we are very grateful to the Faculty of Architecture and Planning, to the Vice Rectorate for Infrastructure and Development, as well as to the Department for Spatial Development, Infrastructure and Environmental Planning to support us on behalf of TU Vienna. The City of Vienna, and here it's basically two institutions, it's the Municipal Department for Architecture and Urban Design, as well as the Executive City Council of Urban Development, Traffic and Transport, also support this conference.
We are very pleased to be able to give these few words of introduction. I start by just saying a few words about the significance of public space and the challenges facing public space in the conditions of urban transformation, and then pass to my colleague here to talk about some of the work that we've done with the students in our last term of presence here in Vienna. If you look at the pattern of urban transformation, perhaps there are two key processes that are taking place that pose a challenge to public spaces and have an impact. One is the changing balance between public and private sectors, and the other is the changing structure of urban economy.
I would like to explain the scope of work done by our students from the last semester. We could call this work learning from a rainfall over Favoritstraße. The topic of the everyday life, the strategy, the multiple roles of public space seem for us a fruitful starting point to generate discussion. Then that leads us to the program of the next 2 days.
And the first subtopic is strategies, plans and policies. I'm very happy to present you Uwe Altrock.
The production and management of public space can be seen as a continuous series of negotiations, conceptual innovations and governance rearrangements that open up opportunities for strategic interventions into what I call the system of hybrid spaces, opportunities that ought to be taken.
The nature of urban space concerns the most fundamental and most pervasive property of the space occupied by urban space users.
On the one hand, we need to consider everyday society's needs and the wider civic function of public spaces in cities. On the other hand, we need to find the design and management strategies to balance various roles of public spaces.
I would like to point out and argue that speech and action, which is now the most crucial aspect for me as I'm dealing with political behavior in public spaces, is appropriated and absorbed by economic developments.
We are really convinced that gender mainstreaming is a very successful and necessary strategy for the quality of public space, that you really have to force the social intelligence of technical departments. There has been a lot of development during the last years.
Defining those regulations, you can also produce something which lacks the actual quality of space.
Somehow, obviously, public sphere is related to democracy, and there are different connotations and understandings of democracy within your two papers.
Thought that whether public spaces play a role as catalysts for change in the sake of the common good is very much, in my opinion, depending on the quality of governance and society.
We will show that particular trends in the process of aestheticization of urban space prevent the open access to public spaces in cities and lead to exclusion.
What I'm trying to do in my work is try to see public space as something that teaches me about how society is doing today.
But let us keep in mind Lefebvre's inviting formula. So everyone has a right to the city, but this implies that we have a notion about the city as a whole. because moving in and around the same neighborhood turns any city into a village.
If we understand public spaces as processes as well, or as socio-historic processes, why, when we set up research, do we almost intuitively choose for analyzing concrete spaces and not processes?
Public space is where public life unfolds. We want you to join in this exhibition, which is rather interactive. So we ask the exhibitors of the posters, of the films, the movies that are shown over there, and we have also an acoustic exhibition piece in the entrance area to stand beside their projects and just ask you, the rest of the public here, to walk around, and once you want to get into contact with people who have been working on this project, just talk to them.
Publics and cultures, deeply entwined as I would argue they are, have complex, sometimes conflictual relationships that define the politics of the urban. So before I go on to look at markets, I want to just briefly trace the complexity of those relationships between cultures and publics, and the ways that they combine or draw together different spatial scales and temporal trajectories into the particularities of place.
Of course, formalization always goes together with informalization. So if you create very limited and controlled spaces for commerce, you will have on the peripheries or on the very edges of these formal spaces, you will have the informal activities of people who can't or don't want to pay, the stall.
Just to explain this term social dynamics that I use, we use this term because social change seems to imply that a neighborhood stands still for some time and then it changes and then it stands still again, but that's not true. So
the social sustainability is visualized where you can see people level.
There are also exotic places in the city, and how can we understand them?
We'll take you across the river, to the wrong side of the river, to a forgotten part of Amsterdam. People that will be attracted by the knowledge that there's this really cool new art center around the corner, run by me, a middle-aged guy who fell in love with this place since he moved here 3 years ago. So I hope you understand now the ambivalence of my position. Do I stick with the old, or do I open the doors for the new gentrification? I'll take you for a small tour around this place, the Mosplein, and I hope you will find it in yourself to marvel at the incompatible elements of architecture from different decades, urban planning from different decades, and pure neglect that it contains, and somehow turns into a kind of organic little miracle of unplanned harmony. But the thing about Mosplein, about small places like this, is that it defies ownership. It resists total makeover. It refuses to become one story. On any given average day, it is many stories at the same time, and there's no hierarchy. Nobody is strong enough to overpower the other. Because it doesn't work according to any plan. The only scenarios it follows is that of the individual people that inhabit and use it, people with nothing if not a strong survival instinct. It's anonymous enough to harbor small criminals, bored teenagers, tired mothers, hardworking guys, illegal tricksters, and yes, even artists. Because this is a place of short memories, it's not burdened by history, it floats on the twists and turns of every day. And this is a place immune to any grand ambitions for gentrification. but also immune to feverish attempts for safety, for order, for sanity. It's not important enough to be rigged with security cameras. It's not attractive enough to be taken over by consumer goods and advertising. It's small enough to force the people that live, work, and drink here to share the same space. It cannot permit ethnic or racial tensions to poison it. Racism and heavy crime would destroy the livelihood of the people stranded here, who have no choice but to tolerate each other in order to survive. 2 eyes, a pair of red lips, and there you go, a happy ending. Thank you very much.
So I think we have to be very careful with the term revitalization, because there is a vital life already, and this is not an empty place. So, and of course, it's a question of power game. What you bring in, what you enlighten, what you underpin in these situations, and I like the ambivalence from the you and the other, and of not at all criticizing, therefore, gentrification. But gentrification is not the only one who switch on light in this area.
So I felt some sort of different approaches. Maybe this is also our East European and Central European different approaches to urban space and to analyzing and presenting the problems of urban space. But I think that this is also a chance to you to distinguish these differences.
Presentations will give us an idea about what participation can be in different ways, of course. So I don't know if you know, this is the participation session.
And this project was initiated by street workers operating in this area.
So of course we can see here the question of scale, tactic, strategy, control, and all the other issues that I was pointing out at the beginning.
I'm happy to announce our last keynote speech.
Capital city cultures. Urban policymakers use symbolic flagship strategies to support economic development, revive their political constituencies, and promote feelings of pride and unity. The Museum Squatter had not only a representational function, but also a function for urban development.
I have some very good papers these 2 days, and very enjoyable, very interesting papers. One of the themes that came about is that people seem to be puzzling a lot about what public space means. There wasn't sufficient problematization of what culture means, what politics is. But there's a lot of interest in what public space means and what are the implications of that for our work. How far does it matter for us to be exactly clear about what public space means for us? Urban society is so complex. Can we capture them? Should we capture them? Try to capture them in simple sentences.
It's not necessary to answer that question, but it's necessary to be aware that it's really diverse.
The public space is the place where the chances are biggest that you laugh with, kiss with, or fight with a total stranger.
And then there is the level of the political institutions.
For whom it's necessary to intervene as a city in public space.
No, the site where citizens are asked to express their citizens' rights.
As a citizen, I don't want to be involved in designing the public spaces in which I live, but I want to have the freedom to use them.
I really lay my hopes that we shall be able, not only as theorists and scholars, but only as people, as citizens, to be engaged in mobilization of more resources and more public resources for the development of public spaces in the direction of more participation and more civil engagement.
The only point that I can make to summarize all this diversity of interests and the points of view is to say, fantastic public space. We are playing out public sphere here, and we are contributing to that. And thank you very much all to be part of it.
Last anecdote of our public intervention here. I recently got the news that our team, our workshop team from Remains, got fined by the police by taping the borders of public space. So maybe that's the start for a debate for the next conference, though. Thank you.